Hello, everybody who's joining us tonight. I'm Karen Kraus, the Executive Director of the Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon. We'll be holding a brief board meeting and then a lovely presentation to follow. So we're just going to give this another 30 seconds, minute or so that others can join. So thank you for being here and more to come momentarily. We'll all be on our best behaviors in the meantime. Nice. A lot of people joining. Thank you. Thank you. We have shared with folks that we are recording this. So if you're only here for part of the meeting, joining late, or you're watching this later, we appreciate your interest and being here live or in the video recording side of it. And because we're very excited to have Courtney come on up and speak, let's start our board meeting. Again, really, thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And I will pass the torch to Jackie Nielsen. She is our president, and she will lead the board meeting.
Thank you, Karen, and I echo our appreciation for you joining us today or this evening or whenever you're watching it. So to start the board meeting, I will commence, and the first order of business is I will entertain a motion to approve the January 2025 meeting minutes as submitted.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Great, thank you. The meeting minutes from January 2026, excuse me, are approved. And now I'd like to go on and progress to board member introductions. And I will start with my introduction. As Karen noted, my name is Jackie Nielsen. I'm a veterinarian and board certified veterinary behaviorist. And we all wanted to share a little bit about how we got involved with Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon or kind of what our passion is behind feral cats. And so I thought I would share with you that I actually was around right at the beginning of the organization. I was part of the PVMA board at the time, the Portland Veterinary Medical Association board, and we started talking. There, a few individuals had come and talked about the kind of situation they were encountering without being able to really find good services for feral cats. And the PVMA started to kind of consider this, and it was going to be a little bit of a kind of a longer process probably to get something done. And some of the members, veterinarians in the community, 5 veterinarians in the community decided we're going to just get this done quickly. And so they started the Feral Cat Coalition of Portland actually at the time. So I remember very kind of, it's a distant memory, but sitting out at a picnic table outside of the PVMA offices and hearing about what their strategy was to help the cats. And so I was around at those beginning days. And another favorite memory of mine is I was a veterinarian out in Wilsonville, Oregon, and got a phone call on a landline because we didn't have cell phones at the time. And it was from a person I didn't know, but lived nearby where I lived, which was on the border of Tualatin Park, a park in Tualatin. And she called to say that she needed some help. She'd been feeding some cats out in the park, and she wanted to trap them, but she'd never trapped a cat. And I'd never trapped a cat, but I said, sure, I'll join you. And so we both went out with this trap and set it up. And Kathy Landert was her name. And she's really got kind of me on that next stage of commitment. And so anyways, those are kind of my early stories. I've been around for many, many years on the board for over a decade, and I'm thrilled to be in the position of serving as president, and really thrilled for all your support that you give the organization, because we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. And I'm going to pass this now to my vice president, Mike McCarr, not mine, Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon's vice president.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Nielsen. Well, my name is Mike McGarr, and I've been a member of the FCCO board for about a year now. And My wife Linda and I are strong believers in the mission of the Feral Cat Coalition and a very impressive group of people here in the organization who make it happen. And I got interested in the organization about 15 years ago when we brought an all-black feral kitty into our home that had been trapped, neutered, and returned by the coalition. And that kitty, Coco Bell, proved to be the best house cat you can possibly imagine. And we had her for many years. And that was how we became involved in the coalition. And we've been supporters ever since. I happen to come from a background in finance and investments. And my hope is to bring some of that experience to the coalition's mission. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you very much for your support.
Thanks, Mike. So now I'll pass it along. We're going to try Allie. We're having a little bit of technical challenges earlier, so we'll see how well you do with the technical, if we can actually get a good feed. And she serves as our treasurer.
Thank you, Jackie. Well, I'm Allie Young, or Allie really, and I'm really grateful to be part of FCCO. I've been here almost under 3 years, and trying to serve as the treasurer. So it's been great. It is a great group to work with. They're very knowledgeable, and it is a nice way to cooperate for the support of the mission. And I actually needed FCCO's help years ago when our neighborhood suddenly had 9 feral cats that disappeared in the yard. So FCCO, I was eternally grateful. That helped me, trained me how to trap. And just like Mike, we've had 3 feral cats as our pets, and they've been fantastic, super clean, and really love that. So our hearts are with FCCO. In the finance committee, it's a very good committee to work with, and right now FCCO is actually almost done with the CPA review and also the preparation of informational return to the IS 990. So that will get done. And we analyze data monthly and also the budgets. And we try to make sure FCCO is efficient and every dollar counts. Everything is used properly for FCCO and its mission. So I'm grateful to be here. And thank you for being here with us and for your support.
Thanks, Allie. I'll move now to Dr. Chris Ellingson, a past president, actually, of the organization.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Chris Ellingson. I am also a veterinarian. In fact, a cat veterinarian for probably at least 35 of my 38 years in practice. I started being aware of Feral Cat Coalition when I recently moved to Portland. And around 2000, 2001, I started volunteering for surgeries when we were out of a truck. That would be once Sunday, once on Sundays, once a month. And so I found out how much I enjoyed doing that, and the camaraderie and the just well-oiled machine that was just in its kind of starting phases back then with our team, that many of who are still with us today. I eventually joined the board after a few years and became president for maybe about 10 years, something like that. Stay on the board because I do enjoy this group, and I feel like I hopefully can be helpful with the group as a veterinarian. I also am a surgeon, contract surgeon with Feral Cat Coalition as well, doing spay neuter surgeries now that we're in our building. I too really appreciated how much the group, I was just amazed at what we were able to do and what FCCO has been able to do to help this group of cats and their caregivers that really didn't have other places to go. And that includes, again, the staff that have been so amazing at growing this organization over the years, as well as the caregivers themselves and how amazing they are at what they're able to do and kind of doing a lot of the hard work on the ground and not getting a lot in return from those cats. But I think they will still say they really care and love those kitties, even though the kitties don't necessarily love them in return. But also, I'm so amazed at our volunteers and donors, people like you that are here supporting us, because that's really the way we are able to help the caregivers for only a donation. So they wouldn't be able to do it without your help. So thanks so much for being here for us.
Thanks, Chris. So moving along, Sean, would you be willing to introduce yourself and give us a little background and maybe even a joke? Because I hear you might have one every now and then.
Well, my story may be a little bit of the joke. Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Mangum. I'm an attorney and a wealth manager. And about 20 plus years ago, the U.S. Navy sent me to Spain with a vast command of Spanish of 5 words. Fortunately, I was adopted by a local cat. It's a little known fact that cats understand every language, and it's our job to learn theirs. So I was adopted by Mancha Luis Alejandro Lunsford Mangum, El Gato del Diablo, or as the vet called him, the cat from the devil. And we've been in love with cats ever since. I met Karen Kraus about 10 years ago, was introduced to the FCCO, and think it's one of the best organizations out there. I've got to roger up what Mike said. This is a great board. The depth and talent here and dedication is amazing. When I grow up, I want to be like Allie. She counts every penny, and everything that comes in supports the cats. And we greatly appreciate your support of feral cats. Thank you.
Sean. So I'm going to move over to, and I'll let Karen maybe start on Devaney. So, and then pass it over to Cliff.
Okay, great. I'm Karen Devaney, and my husband and I are both on the board and have been on the board for about 10 years or maybe 12. Hard to remember precisely. But we were introduced to Feral Cat Coalition by being invited to the Fur Ball, which is a way to really find out about the organization and how much fun it is and about all the incredible work it does. Cliff and I both are lifelong cat lovers. And I had a cat when I was growing up who was a feral cat, but he became tame very quickly. And I used to, as a little tiny kid in the country, right on the city limits, people would drop off stray cats. And I would see them if they came in our yard, and I would open the door and say, "Come on in, I invite you in." And my mother, of course, would roll her eyes and say, "Oh, no, not another one." But I just loved cats, just incredibly. And so my favorite cat of all time lived to be 21 years old, lived all the way through my college years and till my husband and I were married, until that cat finally died. But that cat had been a feral cat at one time. So anyway, that was my story. And I just love what Feral Cat Coalition does. I think they are such an incredible organization, and they've done so much good for these needy little animals. Cliff.
Oh, yeah. Okay. My name's Cliff Devaney. And as you know, I've been married to her for over 60 years. And we've had cats throughout our marriage and throughout our childhood. So I've been very interested. The cats are really an incredible reproductive machine if you leave them alone. And I feel very much compassion for those people who take up a stray cat, and all of a sudden the cat's pregnant, and then they've got 3 or 4 kittens, and it's overwhelming. But they don't want to kill the cats or anything. And so, we can offer them spay and neuter, and they can have a stable cat colony. And it's the same thing for farmers that have a group of barn cats. We can make a stable colony for them. And it's something they can handle. It doesn't get out of control. And I think it's a great service. It's Wonderful. I don't know how long we've been on the board. I've forgotten it, but it's over 10 years and we enjoy this very much.
Thank you both. So now our secretary has joined us, so I'm going to let Becca introduce herself and what brought her to Feral Cat Coalition.
Thank you, Jackie. My name is Becca. I'm currently board secretary, and I joined the board in 2023. I grew up in Portland. I've been volunteering and working with rescue, specifically cat rescue and groups, since I was 15. And around that time, 15, 16 years old, I was introduced to Feral Cat Coalition because I knew some cats that were being fed behind an abandoned house, and heard about FCCO through one of the groups I was volunteering with, and just showed up there as a teenager and was like, what can I do for these cats? And they helped me over in North Portland and taught me how to use the traps and gave me some talking points to talk to the people in the neighborhood, make sure that the cats had caregivers, and make sure that, no one would be upset that I was trapping these cats. And we got them all fixed. So that's how it was introduced. And throughout the years, after working both in a cat vet, I worked with Dr. Ellingson for a number of years while I was in college. And then I worked in a local shelter for 5 years, running the cat adoption intake program. And so, I've just always known of FCCO as a constant and consistent resource. They've always had a wonderful reputation, and I've just seen in so many different ways how they've helped the community. So I've always been interested. I've always been a supporter, and then I moved close by, so I was able to volunteer. I joined the Furball Committee, which is super fun, another group of very dedicated people, and then eventually was invited to join the board. So, very honored to be a part of this organization now, and excited that you guys are here.
Great. Thank you, Becca. And last but not least for board members, the very wonderful Connie Torliger. So Connie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Connie Twilliger. I'm a retired estate planning and domestic relations attorney. And about 25 years ago, I found the fur ball and I started coming every year since. Sometimes I came by myself, sometimes I came with friends. And then slowly I started going into the office, and sometimes I'd return phone calls, sometimes I'd stuff envelopes. And something we call the Roz effect, if Roz is listening, she made me feel very welcome every time I came to the fur ball, and eventually they asked me to be on the board, which I'm very pleased to be. Uh, you will notice too, Emily's cat there is very attentive, and it's always interesting that whenever we have a meeting, and I'll be back later to talk about the development committee, our cats show up. They're like little kids, when you're on the phone or you're doing something else, they want your attention. So oftentimes you'll just see tails go by or little bottoms go by. Or I think Emily's cat is really intent. She was really watching the screen there, and she's got two of them now, a black and a white one. But they all show up, which is really fun. Mine are circling around my feet here trying to get attention, but I have two now. One was an 11-year-old cat I adopted from the Oregon Humane Society on their Forever Friends program. And so he's now 12, and that's CJ. And Scooter, who is a little disabled cat because he was born of a Manx mother, so he doesn't have the muscles and everything in the back in the hip area. And so he's disabled, but he doesn't know he's disabled, and we don't tell him. So he just acts like any other cat. So those two might show up during the meeting, and I'm very privileged to be on this board. They're very tight. The depth of experience, like mentioned before, is tremendous. So I'll be back to talk about the development committee a little bit later. So thank you.
Thanks so much. And the last person I'm going to introduce before we move on to some reports is actually the person behind the white and black cat. So this is Dr. Emmy Farrell, and I'll let you introduce yourself and your exciting new role at Feral Cat Coalition. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I swear I didn't plan this. They just show up when I start talking. So, see, they're going to keep moving around. But I'm Dr. Farrell. I'm originally from Florida, and then I actually moved out to Portland almost 9 years ago now, after I graduated from vet school. So, got my vet degree at the University of Florida. I have a master's in veterinary forensic medicine, and then I came out to Portland to be a part of the ASAP, so the Animal Shelter Alliance of Portland. Didn't really have another plan. I was like, that's the organization that I want to be a part of, and any of the different tiers of that organization is something that spoke to me. So moved out here and I did a shelter medicine internship and residency at Oregon Humane Society. So I'm board certified in shelter medicine. Have been doing high quality, high volume spay neuter as long as I have been working. I've done MASH clinics across the country, and then I've had the luxury of working here in both in the shelter setting and general practice setting, and now being a part of Feral Cat Coalition. So it's something that was innate within me, for this purpose of now. I've been working here as the managing veterinarian since January of this year. But my last name's Farrell. So I feel like it was destined to be, it just took a matter of time to get here. So very excited to be a part of that. My exposure to feral cats in particular outside of Portland, has been since I was maybe 11 years old in Florida. And, there was cats in my neighborhood that I started trapping and bringing home little hissing, spicy babies. And my mom would come home from work and like, sorry, there's another box of kittens. But they kept multiplying. So I started trapping them and figuring out how to get them spayed and neutered and fundraising in my neighborhood. So it's been a long time of doing that, and then eventually progressed to the point of now being the one who's doing the spay and neuter. So I've been aware of Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon since moving out here in 2017 now, as part of the Animal Shelter Alliance of Portland, and just getting the opportunity to meet so many of these people through different avenues in that. And then very excited to now get to be a part of this, because it's important to me to not just have a job, but have something that I love to do. And particularly, I want to be a part of an organization that is not just engaged in like furthering their community and helping their community like grow and accomplish things, but also is interested in being collaborative and working together with different organizations, different people, and trying to figure out like how we best do that together instead of trying to be different, separate siloed things when we all have the same goal in mind. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, again, so wonderful. And we're so grateful to all the contract veterinarians that have worked throughout the years with our organization. But to have a managing veterinarian now on staff and have it to be you is just a real treat for us. And we're so excited. So I do want to make sure, though, and I know that, again, this is our newest staff member, probably, I think, that we have. And there's some really ones that have been around many, 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 many years, and I want to get them a chance to introduce themselves as well. And I know Karen kind of led as our executive director. So let's go over to Leah. Do you mind just giving us a little bit of our operations director background?
Sure. I have been privileged to work for the Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon for, I don't know, close to 30 years. I worked in private practice for 12 years, doing small animal work, mixed animal, and then I worked for the military in Germany for a few years with their military working dogs and taking care of the military animals that were there in their centralized surgery clinic. So when I was in my early 20s, I was running a surgery clinic in Germany, and so it just kind of, and also their mobile clinic, so it kind of seemed destined. When I needed to find a job with a little more flexibility, and I happened to come upon the Feral Cat Coalition of Oregon, and I hadn't heard of it before. But I volunteered and I was like, wow, this is right up my alley. Like I love to organize, I love systems. I like to do adventurous things. It just was really fun. And you got to meet a lot of fun people. So I ran the mobile clinic for about 15 years. And then in that time, we also started our stationary clinic, and then now the stationary clinic that we have. So I've been here for a long time, and it's been a privilege. We get a lot done with a small group, but we get it done. And yeah, I'm very proud of what we've done. So thank you all for joining us and listening to our stories and what we're doing with FCCO this year.
Great. Well, we are certainly lucky to have everyone. And I'm going to move, Karen, I don't know if you want to reintroduce yourself at all before you start in on your executive summary, but that is the next order of business. So I will pass it over to you for that executive summary, and you can start with a little introduction if you'd like.
I'm happy to be the closer on this. I'll keep it brief. I have been with the organization about 30 years. I started as a volunteer and became an early board member, and then a part-time employee, and then full-time. So I feel just as committed and so driven as I did when I first started. I think over the years, the needs have shifted and changed, and we as an organization have really grown to meet as much of it as we can. And it's just been the pleasure of a lifetime to do this with wonderful board members, with awesome volunteers, with incredible donors. And as stated earlier, the folks in the community, the thousands and thousands and thousands we've helped who are just doing the 365-day a year slog of taking care of outdoor kitties. It's not easy, and it's not easy to utilize our program. It takes effort and time and a commitment, and they are unsung heroes in your neighborhoods. So the next time you might see cats or know your neighborhood cat person, share a bag of food, say thank you. We're grateful that you care about cats, and we're just so honored to be able to help cats and the people who look after them. Some other time I'll tell you my background on how I got involved, but just been really quite wonderful. To keep us all moving, I want to just start off with a little bit of coverage. In our last newsletter, you saw our annual report. If you got the newsletter via email, or if you got it in the mail, you may or may not have taken a look. So I'm going to give you a little bit of highlights because it just came out about a week and a half ago. But last year was a record year. We helped 8,681 cats. So nearly 8,700 cats came through our doors. And when you see the annual report, you'll see that we have spay-neuter patients that are 8,376. So 300 or so fewer. And I just want to share that that's because some of the cats will come in and they're too young to be spayed or neutered. Some might be too ill, and others are previously spayed or neutered. So however many come in the door, they may not all actually get spayed or neutered, but they're all going to get our care. They're all going to get our kindness, and they're all going to get a moment of relief from being outdoors and getting some other medical attention. So we are definitely helping all of them, even if they're not spayed or neutered. 100% of the cats coming through our doors in this past year were feral or stray. So they're outdoor cats, they're not people's pets, and they're 100% breeding because they're outdoors. So it is such an honor to be able to help 8,600 cats, all for a donation. And that is made possible because of all of you watching this and being part of it. So absolutely, you're part of this. To the caregiver side for 1 second, we did help 1,862. So almost 1,900 people utilized our program. And the average cats they brought in was about 4.5, which is about right for mom and her litter of kittens. So you can see just in that small number, the tremendous impact as one cat can have multiple litters in a year, being able to help mama and all of her kittens, and those kittens never breed, absolutely an impact. And those kittens not breeding, we helped almost 4,000 kittens. So the ability to stop breeding before it happens is a complete gift to the community. And we're really grateful to be able to do that. And then fiduciarily, you heard a little bit from both Mike and Allie. We do pay attention closely to how the funds we receive are utilized. And last year, 89 cents of every dollar you gave us made sure that it was going towards the cats and the programs that help cats. So you have full confidence that we're doing what we say we'll do and utilizing your contributions with our heart and with our soul. So that's a little bit on that annual report. Maybe that sheds some light if you took a look at it and you wondered, what's that all mean? You are more than welcome to give me a call or an email if you've got additional questions. I'm always happy to answer them as well. And then every board meeting, I do an executive summary and Leah does an operations report. So I'm going to go through that executive summary little bit quicker than usual for you tonight, but first and foremost, as part of our 150,000th cat celebration, we have a raffle. If you have not seen that, it is on our website. We're gonna it's getting fancy. Devon's great. We've got 6 fantastic getaways in Oregon is the grand prize, $6,000 value, and you see that on the screen right now. We also have a Portland package is the prize number 2, and then the third prize is a Visa gift card. 3 incredible gifts, one price. A ticket is $100, and we're selling those tickets through March 2nd. The drawing is on March 3rd, so that's coming up. Just only a couple more days left to get your tickets. If you already bought a ticket, yay, thank you. Our board of directors and our staff cannot buy tickets and can't win, and we're all feeling a little sad. But that means that you can, and that means that we're making this a gift to the community. So please share that with your friends and family. It'll be in the chat. You'll also find it on our website. Need to be in Oregon to buy tickets. That's kind of the one thing that the law makes us say and do. But we do hope that you can spread the word about it as well. Every dollar spent goes towards the kitty cats or raised. So thank you for supporting that. A different front is the Fur Ball, which is our annual fundraiser. This year it's Pretty in Pink. And we're currently getting sponsorships to sign up, and we've got 19 tables sold already, guys. So kudos to everyone who's purchased a table, purchased tickets. Invitations haven't even come out yet, and people are getting seriously engaged in our 1980s prom. So it's going to be a totally rad event. So like, don't miss it. And I don't think I have my 80s accent down, but I'll get it for the Fur Ball on May 2nd. If you'd like to help us get any auction items, dinner certificates are always, always popular. We put a dinner package together. We also have a wall of wine. We've got dog and cat packages, outings, etc. And we have a dessert dash this year. So if you know bakeries, bakers, we want to hear from you and help us make some amazing desserts that our guests will purchase. I also do want to do a little shout out to a program that we're working on in addition to our clinics, which Leah will give you an update on cat numbers and activities within our program. We are partnering with the Animal Shelter Alliance of Portland. That is the major animal welfare groups in the Portland area. And this year, our focus is on spay-neuter, raising awareness and raising capacity for more spay-neuter in the community. There's definitely a need to help low-income folks get their cats spayed and neutered. It's a big source of the cats that we're seeing, and we're doing everything we can to raise that awareness. We've got a presentation in person at their Rose City Veterinary Conference in April, and we'll be meeting in front of the Portland Veterinary Medical Association's in-person meeting at the end of May. So know that we're trying to work on every front we possibly can to increase both awareness for spay neuter and access to spay neuter. And we'll have more to share with you in the future. All right, Sarah, pass it along to Leah for the operations report.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Hello, everybody. Yep, I just talk a little bit about the numbers, our numbers, usually at our board meetings. In January, we saw 865 patients. That's a really big month for us. Last January, we did around 900, so it's close to that. But what's kind of exciting about that is those are almost all adult cats who are breeding. So those are 830 or 865 cats that, were able to have kittens that aren't having kittens anymore. So that's great. In January, we sent over 30 cats to on our Kitten Caboose program. So our Kitten Caboose program, many of you are probably familiar with it, but we caregivers who tame their kittens can sign them over to us as long as they're healthy and tame. And then we'll spay and neuter them, vaccinate them, and send them over to Oregon Humane Society or Cat Adoption Team, our rescue partners. So we're very grateful for that partnership because we're able to get some of the kittens off the street into homes through that program. And last year in 2025, in total, we sent 288 kittens through that program. So I think that we'll be sending, I feel like every year we'll be sending a little bit more, a few more. Our average number of surgeries per day in January were 69. So 69 surgeries per day got us there. And we saw 141 kittens that were under 6 months of age. So we're still seeing kittens. We're still seeing the breeding patterns continuing through this winter. Not as much as it will be, but we're certainly getting a start on it. And then our average donation, we calculate our average donation per cat, and it comes out to about half of what we ask for our donation, which is we ask for $50, and it averages out to about half of that. More or less, $1 to more or less each month. And, we don't really expect the caregivers to be able to fund $50 per cat for all their cats because a lot of them are feeding and bringing in, 20 plus cats. We hope the ones and twos can do that. And that's why we have to do all this fundraising. The $50 donation is just kind of like a copay. It's certainly not the cost of what it costs for us to do, to provide the services for these cats. So we are on track this year to do 9,000, to see 9,000 cats. We're a little ahead of projection right now, which is great. And yeah, we're just doing more cats. And one of the reasons we're able to be more stable this year and to hope we can plan on doing more cats is because we have Dr. Farrell with us this year. So having a staff veterinarian who's going to be there every day gives us some consistency. And we know that if the second vet cancels, that Dr. Farrell can do them all on her own. So we don't have to panic. It takes a lot of stress off us. Yeah, because she's great. And we are very excited to have her with us. Other thing that we did last year, and we're going to continue this year, is last year we started a pilot program to hold workshops to train veterinarians on our community and the high volume techniques that we use for our surgeries. And we did 4 of those training workshops last year. We trained 12 veterinarians that are in the community able to do more surgeries today than they were before they came to our workshop. And their confidence, one of the things we kind of measure is their confidence, because sometimes they just need more confidence. All the confidence levels went up as well. And this year we have 4 more planned. And the first one is in just a couple weeks. It's filled. And the second one in May, we just have 1 spot left. And then we have another one in July and then September. So it's very exciting, that program. I expect it to grow. And that's just another way that we're trying to increase the capacity of the surgery capacity in our community so that, we obviously can't do it all, and neither can the shelter. So involving the vets in our community is kind of the next step, and they seem really up for it. So it's exciting.
Thank you so much, Leah. And for, again, all the work that our staff is amazing with a small but mighty staff that we have. We really appreciate everything they do to actually put everything into action on the floor. So thank you. So moving along, I'm going to go to some committee reports. First, I will just kind of touch on the governance committee and give you a little bit of background about what this committee is and see if anyone out there in the internet world that we're speaking to has an interest. We do entertain individuals that are not on the board for participation in committees. If they have a good fit and kind of an interest in serving, let us know. But the governance committee is actually the committee that is considered probably in many nonprofits to be one of the most important because it's kind of the conscience of the board. It's responsible for articulating the vision of the board and recruiting new board members that can carry out our vision. So some of the activities that we do, which don't sometimes sound super exciting, but they kind of can be if you're a detail-oriented person and you like this type of thing. We review the bylaws, we work on getting organizational kind of packages and descriptors of what the different roles are in the organization. We do succession planning, a very important part of any organization, to look at the future of it. So kind of orient new board members, let's see, help develop them as they come on. So it's a group that does quite a lot of kind of important kind of, I say, foundational work for the organization and oversight for it. So with that in mind, we also will have a strategic planning branch oftentimes of that, where we'll look at just kind of what does the 5 or 10-year vision look like? So not just working on today, but working on tomorrow. So we're always looking forward to what's next and what the possibilities are. So with that, I'm going to pass now the committee report over to Connie on the development committee to give us an update and a little bit of description about what the development committee does.
Thank you, Jackie. It's me again. My CJ's now on my lap, and the other one is trying to tear apart my waste paper basket down here. So if you hear some ruffling, that's who it is. Scooter is very involved in paper at the moment. I guess what you could say for the development committee is we're kind of a creative support group. We meet every 2 months. There's about 5 or 6 of us on the committee now. You do not need to be on the board to be on the committee. So if you're at all interested, please contact Karen, and we'll certainly talk to you more about you might be interested in it. One of our main jobs, of course, is be supportive of the staff and the board for fundraising. We don't do federal grants, that kind of thing, so we rely on the private donations for all our support. And if you've looked at the annual report, you know how tight we are. You know, every dollar that comes in, we want to make sure it goes to the cats and not into other things, which you know, when you have the donative intent, that's wonderful, but you got to run the business part of it. And if you don't last very long, or you lose the support of your donors. So every dollar that comes in, we look at and say, how can that best support what our mission is? So we look at all kinds of fundraising and support that way. We also look at how to support the actual staff, you know, that work there. They're very dedicated, and they're on the front lines. They are first responders, those ones that answer the phones and that work in the clinics. You know, it is a medical facility, and it's tough sometimes. So we try to support them. And then also ways to thank our donors and volunteers and staff, because without them, we couldn't do the work that we do. And so we want to make sure we want to make sure that they know how much we appreciate them. And so we try to come up with ideas to let them know that we do appreciate them, and actually the board too. So if you're at all interested in help make money be creative and to help in a very positive way, and there's so many things going on in the world that we can't control, but this we can. You know, this we can work at, and it's a man-made problem, a person problem, and we can solve that problem. And so that's what we're working on. So if you're interested, please give Karen or me a call, and we'd be glad to talk to you.
Thanks. Connie. And we're fortunate, I think when Allie was doing her introduction, she gave you a review of the financial committee. So we'll probably leave that one there. We're running a little tight on time. But I do have one other committee that I'd like, if you're able, Becca, to kind of share a little bit about our Catalyst, or that Catalyst committee, and what that's all about, and who might be interested in it.
Sure. Yeah, this is a brand new committee, just being birthed here. So, the purpose of the Catalyst Committee is to formally supplement FCCO fundraising and long-term support by developing future leadership and gaining new perspectives and engaging young professionals who have an interest specifically in events, marketing, graphic design, things like that. And so we're looking for people who may want to, you know, join a board eventually, but maybe feel like, you know, that isn't something they're quite ready yet, or they'd like to get some experience kind of being in a board-like setting. And we are definitely looking for people who are young and can kind of help us reach a younger demographic as just another way to gain more support in the future, kind of going back to that succession planning. And so this is something that we've just started and we've gotten some interest in. But certainly if you know anyone that is interested in working with nonprofits, learning how to fundraise, obviously Feral Cat Coalition is one of the most, in my opinion, successful fundraising organizations, and, you know, especially in the animal space. So if you know anyone that is interested in that and would like to eventually be able to be on a board, I know that can be a little daunting for some young people, that idea. And so this kind of will help them reach that.
Thank you. And I'm going to now thank everyone. Thanks Thank everyone on the board and outside there who serves on our committees. We really appreciate it. So passing it back to Karen to do an introduction of our special guest tonight, who I'm going to say, I'm in the middle of her book, and if you haven't read it yet, it's definitely worth a read. So Karen, I am going to pass it to you, and we're so grateful that she's here with us tonight.
Nice. What a great start to the introduction. It is such an honor to introduce our speaker for tonight's special presentation. She is the author of Poet Square, My Memoir in 30 Cats, which is the heartfelt memoir about her experience caring for a colony of feral cats in Tucson, Arizona. When she moved into a rental house in Poet Square, that's the name of the book, in that neighborhood, she didn't know the property was already inhabited, that there were some others that she was moving in on. And the book really shows her commitment, her journey, her exploration of the cats, the community, compassion, connecting people together to help both cats and humans. And her book debuted on the New York Times bestseller list. So it's a must read for all the cat lovers out there. And I must also admit that Chris Ellingson gave me a copy of the book as a birthday gift. And then but I had to share it back with her for her to read it. So it is making the rounds within FCCO. Our presenter is a cat rescuer, a community organizer, and the creator of the Poet Square Cats on TikTok as well as Instagram, and has a heck of a following, and that makes her an incredible advocate for trap neuter return. She also has a tremendous background in writing, thus the book is incredibly well written. So I am very excited to have her here tonight. You're in for a real treat. I'm pleased to welcome Courtney Gustafson. Get a round of applause. Hi, Courtney.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Karen. That was a very generous start. And thank you all for having me here tonight. You know, I live and breathe TNR and high volume spay and neuter here in Tucson. And it's so nice to have the chance to pop in, even virtually, to another city and just see another group of folks so committed to the same work. I think it's really easy to end up with blinders on when there's such immediate need in our immediate area. But I feel such a sense of solidarity knowing that you all are so far away but committed to the same work, and it just really re-energizes me to keep going. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to share my screen. Really, I just want to show you some cat pictures. I like to say my whole career is just an excuse to share cat photos. So hopefully that's working for you. I'd like to start by telling you a story. If you've read my book or if you follow me online, you know some of this already. You know, spoilers, there's a lot of cats involved. But this is my story. In this story, it is the summer of 2020, which I'm sure you remember is the first summer of the COVID pandemic. So the background of this, it's a really rough summer. I was working at a nonprofit job where we were hit really hard by the pandemic. And so I was busy and I was broke and I was constantly feeling overwhelmed by just a lot of bad happening in the world and feeling really powerless to do anything about it. That summer, I was newly dating my partner, Tim, and we had decided to move in together. We had both been living alone separately in small apartments, and so we decided to look for a new place together. And if you've read the book already, you know what happens. We move into this perfect little rental house in a neighborhood in Tucson called Poet Square. And I am realizing, there we go, Poet Square. And the house is great. I am speaking to you now from the kitchen of that very same house, so we are still here. It has a nice little yard. It has 2 bedrooms. We could afford the rent here, which was pretty much the main quality we were looking for in a home. And as it turns out, the house also came with 30 feral cats. The cats kind of snuck up on us. So it wasn't like this. It wasn't like this photo right away. It was one cat at a time, then a second cat. You know, the obvious question now is, how did you not know there were 30 cats on this property when you first moved in? You know, but you all know feral cats. They had lived outside most of their lives. This is some of the friendlier bunch in this photo, but there were cats that we didn't see until we had lived there for months. They were so good at hiding. And so in daytime, everything would seem normal. We had toured the house and we hadn't seen a single cat. And then at night, we would hear the yowling. that I came to know very well. We would hear paw prints, little feet across the roof at night when we were trying to sleep, and we would wake up and there would be little tufts of fur all over the ground. I became obsessed with these cats. I wanted to learn everything about them. I didn't know anything about TNR. I had never heard of feral cats. Didn't know it was a problem that existed in the world, and especially not in Tucson, where I had lived for many years without ever seeing a stray cat. They're good at hiding. And so I would stay up late. I would try to catch glimpses of the cats when they emerged. I was trying to count them. I was trying to figure out how many there really were. I was trying to figure out if they belonged to someone or where they had come from, or if I was supposed to be in charge of them now. And again, this was height of the pandemic, right? Full quarantine. So we weren't having friends over. I wasn't leaving the house much. We didn't have a housewarming party. I think a lot of people got kind of weird quarantine obsessions. Most people started baking bread. But for me, it was these cats. I started putting out bowls of water, bowls of food. I was buying cat treats. I could have, invested in Temptations at the time for the amount of money I spent on them. And every night I would sit outside in the dark and I would dole out my treats one at a time to any of the cats that were brave enough to approach. And then, of course, we started naming the cats. And when there are that many cats, the names get pretty silly. So that's Monkey and her sister, Reverse Monkey. She kept that name. That's Mr. Business. That's Sad Mouth Sam. She kept the name, but her mouth doesn't look like that anymore. That's Dr. Big Butt, who features in an essay in my book. And you might know Sad Boy, and of course, Lola, who still lives with us here outside. She still hates me just as much. Before I knew it, I was buying beds for the cats. The first thing we got was this single little mat, barely even a bed, and I put it outside our door. That's the view from our kitchen window, and that's Reverse Monkey. And I'll tell you actually now I'm sitting right by that same window so I can look outside and keep an eye on the cats while I'm chatting with you tonight. We actually have a new kitten here. No one knows where it came from. So it never stops. But when I look at old pictures now, I can kind of tell when they're from based on how insane our carport looked, because then we got a few beds. And then we got this. This is one of my favorite pictures of the cats. We got these cubes. And then we got this heated tent. So clearly I got very attached to the cats. As I'm sure many of you know, if you've worked with cats living in large numbers, they were not in great condition. Goldie here actually had a broken jaw and some fresh wounds on his body. Alien was so crusty she couldn't breathe through her nose. That's Lola and Minnie and Reverse Monkey, and all three were pregnant at the same time. I didn't realize it then because I didn't know anything. There were kittens born in our driveway, and most of them didn't survive. And the cats were so hungry and so skinny. And I would put down bowls of cat food, and they would go absolutely nuts, growling and hissing, slapping each other, trying to get to that food. That's my story. Because I realized something needed to be done. So I jumped in. The cats had names and beds and treats and toys, and next was vet care. I learned about trap, neuter, return, a whole new world for me. I borrowed traps. I trapped every single one of those 30 cats, got them to the vet for spay and neuter, vaccines, and all the other care that they needed. That's Ham Boy going to the vet, and that's Francois getting his neuter, actually coming back from his neuter because he's got a fresh ear tip there. These are some of the very first cats I ever trapped. After that, I started reaching out to rescues, and some of those friendlier cats moved indoors with fosters. And now, several years later, we have just a handful of cats left here, although plenty of new ones showing up this year. And they are all fixed. They are all chunky and well-fed and well-loved. And all of this started me on this path where I've trapped hundreds of other cats since then. I think we're in the thousands by now easily. Started volunteering with rescues, started collecting cat food donations, and fundraising for vet clinics here in Tucson, training other people to do the same work, and writing a whole book about it, all the way up to speaking here with you all tonight. That's the version of the story that I would like to tell you. It's a nice, neat story, a happy ending. It makes me sound like the hero. And the more honest version of the story is that when I found 30 cats living outside our house, I did not immediately jump in to help. I did everything I could to not have to be the person to help those cats. It's not that I didn't love cats. I had been a cat person all my life. I had always had pet cats. I mean, I loved those cats. I didn't want them to suffer. I wanted them to have as much food as they needed and warm beds and vet care. I would have given anything for some magical person to show up and just fix all of it. I just didn't want that person to have to be me. And again, the backdrop for all of this, the beginning of the pandemic, people I knew were dying in our community. I was working full time at a really stressful job where I was worried every day about getting laid off. Eventually, I did get laid off, and I couldn't afford to keep feeding the cats. My life was so full of things like hoping my car would start every morning and trying to afford groceries. We had a really tight budget that summer, and whenever I tell the story now of finding these cats, I'm always mentioning the cat treats. They're in almost every picture, the big tubs of temptation cat treats. And I always say it like a joke now, like, of course, when you find 30 cats, you go out and you buy treats for them. The reality is that I remember buying those treats because I remember standing in the grocery store and doing the math. I was buying groceries and there was no extra money. And I put back a container of oatmeal and some grapes and some oranges so that I could afford to buy those temptations. Those were precious, those treats that I tossed out one by one for the cats. The idea of affording vet care for 30 cats. Every night I would go outside and sit in the carport with the cats in the dark, and I would be so overwhelmed that I would cry. I would talk to the cats in the dark and I would say, I don't know what to do with you guys. I don't know how to help you. Again, I had never heard of trap, neuter, return, had never heard of high volume spay, neuter. I had no idea what the local resources were, and I don't think I would have known how to even Google them. Like I maybe would have Googled how to help 30 cats at once for free, and that wouldn't have gotten me very far. And the night I took this picture, I remember it specifically because that fluffy Siamese looking cat in the middle, I had never seen that cat before. And this was maybe a month, 2 months into knowing these cats existed, and I've got my little tub of temptations. I thought by then I had cataloged every single cat. I at least knew them all. And still new ones were showing up. And I realized that they just keep showing up. By then I had realized that several of the cats were pregnant. And I had this really heavy sobbing realization in the dark in my carport, feeling really isolated in this problem that I thought no one else in the world has ever experienced, having 30 cats at once. And I realized that, I was going to have an infinite number of cats unless I figured something out. And I tell that story now, this more honest version, where I didn't do anything at first. Because I wanted to be clear that that's the only reason I got involved. I didn't get into this work from a place of enthusiasm and excitement. I didn't dive in feeling like I knew what to do or had the resources to do it. I didn't have this moment where I was like, this is my purpose in life. This is my calling. I got involved in helping feral cats because it was kind of a surrender. No one else was going to do it. When I finally started helping those cats, I also started sharing pictures of them on social media. That's my Instagram account now. I started an Instagram account before any of those cats had been to the vet. And to be clear, that's the wrong order to do things in. I know that now. I've never deleted any posts on Instagram. And so if you scroll back far enough, you can find very early posts of me feeding treats to cats and people commenting and saying, you should really look into TNR. You need to get these cats fixed. I've been fortunate to grow a pretty large platform on social media, and one of the comments I get most frequently, I wish we had someone like you in my neighborhood. I wish we had someone like you here. I wish someone like you could come talk to my neighbors and could come help the cats in my town. And of course, what I say every single time is, it's you. I'm so sorry. That person is going to have to be you. And I never mean that in some like motivational, inspirational way. Like, you can do this too. This could be your calling in life. The crazy thing that's happened since I started trapping cats almost 6 years ago now, because I have a platform, because I do it a lot, because I wrote a book about it, is that people think that I'm kind of an expert now, that I'm kind of a professional. And then people think that that's what you need to be in order to help cats in this way. And so I do have a lot of experience now. I have a lot of cat stories to tell. And I love to share advice with folks who are trapping a cat for the very first time. I love to share tips and tricks for tricky cats. But my real expertise, the thing that actually makes me good at this, is that I started as any other person, overwhelmed in the dark, alone, crying with some cats who needed help, and not knowing what to do about it. We don't need more professional trappers. We don't need full-time trappers. You don't have to help trap cats every night of the week. What we need is every regular person who maybe has no background in animal welfare and no idea what they're doing, who sees a few stray cats in their neighborhoods, to step up and get them fixed. Of course, we also need people, those people who are stepping up, to have a place to bring those cats. We need affordable, accessible spay and neuter and other vet care for community and owned cats. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what TNR looks like here in Tucson, where I ended up taking all of those cats from our house when I finally stepped up and borrowed some traps. I want to start by saying that I'm really impressed hearing about FCCO and how longstanding your organization is in the community. TNR here in Tucson is formally only about a decade old. We started getting funding for TNR back in 2014. And I say we, but that was before I was involved in any of this. There were independent trappers doing some work with independent vets prior to 2014. But TNR is very, very new in kind of the city of Tucson and in Tucson's memory. So one of our many challenges that we face here is folks who believe that we're trapping cats to have them euthanized. I'm sure many of you have experienced the same thing, but it's very recent memory here in Tucson for folks that people trapping cats are doing so to cull them. We're in Pima County, Arizona. And Pima County has pretty extraordinary resources at this point for community cats. Here in Tucson, we have 3 clinics that provide high volume, high quality spay and neuter specifically for community cats. It helps for accessibility that we have those 3 different clinics in 3 different parts of the city because we're fairly spread out, but our numbers are lower. So those 3 clinics combined are spaying and neutering about the same number of cats that you all are doing all in all in a year. TNR is free in Tucson for the public. Donations accepted, but kind of just with a jar on the counter. There's no expectation of donations. There is no cost. It's free to borrow traps. It's free to learn how to use a trap. It's free to drop off any number of cats for spay, neuter, vaccines, and additional vet care, including flea medication, basic wound care, antibiotic shots. I'm sure you all have seen the many injuries and illnesses common to community cats. We have options for free dentals for feral cats, and our municipal shelter just treated their first community cat for FIP for free, and he made a full recovery and is now, just in the last week, back with his caretaker in the community. We have programs that provide transportation assistance for large numbers of cats. And we have programs that do full service trapping, which is a lot of what I do these days. So we go out and do every single step of the process. And those programs prioritize disabled folks. We have a lot of elderly cat caregivers, folks with mobility challenges, and especially caretakers who care for really large numbers of cats. Another thing that we see commonly is very, very large colonies. It's curious to me that your average number of cats per caretaker was 4.5, mom and a couple kittens. It's pretty rare that we meet someone who's caring for 1 cat and a couple of kittens. Many, many colonies have been breeding out of control for so many years. We very commonly are working with 50, 80, 100 cats at a time. So these larger scale efforts in mass trapping are one of the only ways we can really make a dent here. Our county has some of the best resources for public TNR in the country, and we are still drowning. We are still seeing huge numbers of cats that need care and very long lists of reasons why our neighbors can't access that care. One that is certainly not unique to Tucson, but is a big one right now, is the threat of ICE in our community. We are a border town. We are only about an hour from the border to Mexico, and we have a very, very large immigrant population. The threat of deportation is not new in our community, but it is very much escalated right now. And we have a lot of caregivers who are not willing to leave the house and are very nervous about accessing any kind of care for their animals because they're worried about having to show ID or documentation. And so we're seeing a huge increase in that, as well as deportations and animals being left behind. And of course, that's what everything really comes down to, is the ability to access care. I love telling a cat story, so if you'll indulge me, and I'm going to try not to go over time here, but I could just talk about cats for hours. Let me tell you one more cat story. This is a colony of cats that we nicknamed the Diet Coke Colony. We named them that because I was there with a few other volunteer trappers. We were standing around a shed in the backyard, just quietly waiting for our traps to go off. And this little kitten that no one knew about wandered out of that shed and stood next to a can of Diet Coke on the ground, and he was the same size as the can of Diet Coke. And so we named that kitten Diet Coke. We started calling this colony the Diet Coke Colony, and we named all of the cats after sodas, which I highly recommend as a theme, a name theme for a litter or a colony. Baja Blast is a very good cat name. Dr. Pepper, Coke Zero. We had been getting calls about this colony through our local humane society. And it wasn't their caretaker who was calling asking for help. It was his neighbors. And they were mostly calling to complain. They were really mad at the guy who lived here because they said he was neglecting cats. They said he had caused this problem. He had let all of these cats reproduce out of control for years on his property, and now he wasn't feeding them. He wasn't taking them to a vet. They were suffering, and he didn't care. So I went out and I talked to this guy. I'm a little safer with my community practices these days. I usually at least take a buddy, but this was very early in my trapping career. And sometimes I think back to the things I did and thought, who told me it was okay to just show up at this guy's house? But I did. I did that all the time. His name was Jeff, and the neighbors were right. The cats didn't look good. There were at least 35 or 40 just visible during the daytime, which meant there's probably a lot more than that hiding at night. There were kittens, there were very sick cats. The cats were really, really hungry. And my instinct, my gut reaction was exactly the same as the neighbors. It was to feel upset and to feel angry and to think, how could someone do this? How could someone let something get this bad? And I remember vividly, so early in my trapping career, standing in that yard surrounded by cats who were really in pretty poor condition, talking to Jeff, and working really hard to turn that little switch in my own brain from judgment and anger to curiosity. To flip that little switch from how could someone do this to genuinely, really, what might cause someone to do this? And so that's what I asked him. I said, Jeff, what's going on? What can we do to help? And Jeff told me he was a veteran. He lived alone. He was in his 70s. He was disabled, and he had found himself declining physically quite a bit. He used to feed the cats in that shed where Diet Coke the kitten had emerged. And there were cat beds in there and bowls that clearly hadn't been touched in a while, because it turned out he needed a walker now. And that shed was too far from his house. The ground was too uneven, and he couldn't make it back there. He couldn't lift a heavy bag of cat food anymore. And he was really embarrassed about that. He didn't want to tell me. His truck had died, and he couldn't afford to fix it, so he no longer had transportation. Jeff told me that he still bought cat food. He did his best to feed the cats, but he had to scale back how much he bought because the cats were eating better than he was. Sometimes he would eat plain pasta for dinner because it was the cheapest thing that filled him up. And if he skipped the sauce and he skipped the meat and he skipped the vegetables, he could afford a little more cat food, even though there were way more cats than he could possibly keep up with. He didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have a computer. Those just weren't resources he was familiar with. And so we offered lots of help. We helped with cat food. We started trapping. We built up trust with Jeff. This was in the summer where it hits 110 degrees every day. And I realized that the cats didn't even have bowls of water. And I thought, I can help with this. This is easy. I bought big stainless steel bowls and I brought them to Jeff. And I said, hey, all you got to do is fill these up. Can you fill these up for me inside or with this hose? And just keep them clean. Just keep them topped off for the cats. And I'll never forget the look that Jeff gave me of just kind of utter shame and desperation. And he admitted to me that his home didn't have running water. I had taken that for granted, that that was a resource people had. But he hadn't been able to pay his bill and it had been turned off and he couldn't keep up with it. And he knew that, and that was a choice he was making to continue to feed himself and feed the cats. I think about Jeff and his cats all the time. It's been about 5 years now. That was one of the first situations that taught me that what looks like neglect is often a lack of resources. Most of the time, what looks like not caring, I skipped a slide here, but often what looks like not caring is actually just a lack of access to care. And I'm going to speed through this last part because I know some of you will have questions and I can't wait to answer them. But I think it's really common to look for a villain in a story. It's partly just what our brains are wired to do. Humans are story-seeking creatures. And so we're always looking for like a nice, clear narrative and a nice, neat, happy ending, and a good guy and a bad guy in a story, the hero and the villain. And I think it's especially tempting in animal stories. We know the animal's not the bad guy, and if the animal is suffering, then someone must have caused that. And we want to be mad at that person. It's such an easy story to tell. It's really good for fundraising. If you can unite everyone against the bad guy, the person who abandoned this animal, the person who didn't get their cat fixed because they're not a responsible pet owner. And if there's one thing I have learned in almost 6 years now of doing this work in the community, meeting folks like Jeff, is that there usually isn't a villain. The villain is almost always just a regular person trying their best, often with really, really few resources. Usually the villain is actually a systemic lack of access to care. The villain is poverty. The villain is a lack of social safety nets. The villain is no affordable vet clinic within a 2-hour drive. And sometimes I find this pretty overwhelming because those are big problems to solve. Like, oh, cats aren't getting the care they need. Let me just fix poverty. You know, it's a lot easier to kind of default back to that narrative of this guy's just bad. He hates cats, than to try to conceptualize how we can fix an entire system. But there's good news about this. The good news is that when the villain is a lack of accessible care, we can do something about that. You all are already doing it. You are stepping up to that problem and providing that care, making that accessible. The good news is that the people who seem like the bad guy in stories aren't like evil at heart. They're not these like fundamentally bad people who rejoice in the suffering of animals. That I don't know how to solve. Most of the people in these stories are just regular, good, kind people who do the right thing for animals when that's accessible to them. The work that you all are doing already, providing accessible, affordable vet care, being the person who steps up to get cats fixed, that's the antidote to the villain stories. Because the other good news is that when we realize that villains are just regular people, that also means that heroes are also just regular people. The heroes in the story, the cat rescuer, the trapper, the person who goes out and makes sure that a cat caregiver has enough food today. Those are the heroes, and they're regular people. They're not experts. They're not professionals. It's just the people who notice a few cats. They have no idea what to do to help, but they step up, they figure it out, and they find the resources. I want to thank all of you who care about community cats. All of you who care for cats, feed cats, and make this the extra step, the extra effort to make sure those cats aren't reproducing. And I want to thank all of you who make that possible, who make that care accessible to folks. It all comes down to access to care, and I am so impressed. Seeing how things run here and seeing the work that you guys are doing up in Oregon is so impressive and so energizing. And I'm so honored to be a tiny little part of it by getting to chat with you tonight. Thank you for listening to my cat stories.
Courtney, I could listen to you much, much longer, and I'm gonna guess that I'm not alone in that. What, wow, compelling. I really how you got involved in your honesty on the I just wish somebody else could kind of make this problem go away is yeah, really, I think that's so much how I think many, many, many feel. And really important you share that because it is true. There aren't villains. There are heroes though. There really are the people who step up and they're everyday people. I just that really moved me. And meeting people where they are, right?
Absolutely.
That it moving from judgment to compassion is really just the heart of the best of everyone and heading in the same direction and helping the cats. That's really a good reminder for all of us. Oh my gosh. So we are going to start asking anybody who has a question to add that to our chat so that I can hopefully find them and then share them. But I am going to kick it off with a question because I knew it might take people a moment to sign in.
Sure.
A question that already came to me from somebody attending is, how are the free services funded in Arizona? As you mentioned, there's a number of them.
Yeah, the obvious question, right? Free never really means free. So we do have some county funding here. Again, that's fairly recent. I've seen huge change in the 5 to 6 years that I've been doing this now. Many of these programs have expanded pretty substantially. So we do have county funding that was expanding every year until this last year was cut pretty significantly. So that continues to be a challenge. Our 3 clinics are one at our county shelter that is county funded completely. We have a humane society, private nonprofit that does TNR, and they are funded entirely by donations and grants. And then we have a 3rd clinic that is kind of a mix of the two. That's an independent clinic. They get some funding through our county TNR program to offset costs for the TNR surgeries they're doing, but they also will continue doing those surgeries when the funding runs out. So at that point, they depend on donations as well. And we are fortunate to have a couple individuals who give very, very, very generously. We don't see a lot of the smaller donations from caretakers coming in and, bringing a couple dollars when they can. It's much more common that we're getting very large donations from folks who have really just made it a priority in their life to fund that work. So we're very grateful for that. And I suppose I will add that the Humane Society program funded primarily by donations, and many of those are from my followers. So I'm very proud to be part of that program. That has expanded hugely in the last 5 years, mostly because I've been able to do some really big fundraisers for them. So that's been great.
That's awesome. Super helpful. Um, that's nice to know. One of the questions that came in is, can you share about Jeff, the gentleman you were talking about who didn't have water?
Yeah. Yeah. I lost contact with Jeff about 2 years ago, and that's common. We do our best. We helped Jeff for a total of about 3 years, and so I call it my paper route, but I drive around town dropping cat food off for folks, and he was a regular stop on my paper route for many years, dropping off cat food, and I would clean out the water bowls while I was there and help out with that. I was fortunate to have some of the knowledge of resources because I had worked at a nonprofit food bank before getting into animal welfare. It was a pretty large regional food bank that also had a resource center that had caseworkers that would help connect people to SNAP benefits and other local resources. So we did get Jeff connected with a local caseworker who I know was able to help him with grocery assistance. I can't say for certain that he got his water turned back on, but I know that they were working on it. So Unfortunately, so many of these stories, I get asked a lot about, updates for some of the stories in the book as well. And sometimes they're sad. Sometimes they're sad updates, or sometimes they're unknown updates. Last I knew, many of the cats at the Diet Coke colony were very old. They had been around a long time, and so many of the kittens there we were able to socialize, adopt out. Many of the cats have since passed, but very well loved and healthy to the end. So we did our very best to see that one through.
Right. I know you did work at a food bank, so I don't know how this question ties in. Maybe you've covered some of it, but your book connects the struggles of the cats with the struggles that the people are facing, from poverty to health issues. And did caring for them change the way you saw the bigger issues?
Absolutely. I thought that I was someone who was, fairly involved in my community and fairly knowledgeable about issues. I worked at a food bank that was served all of Southern Arizona, which is a very large area. And so I felt like I had a good understanding of food insecurity and poverty and the issues facing more rural communities and food deserts. I had a pretty good understanding that many of the folks coming in for food assistance also needed help with childcare and utility assistance. My dad is a social worker, and so I grew up with, some sort of concept of there are a lot of folks who need a lot of resources, but getting involved in trapping cats was a whole other side of it. It took me to neighborhoods in Tucson that I hadn't really had reason to be in before. It took me to mobile home parks where I was shocked at the conditions that people were living in. It's the most naive I've ever felt in my life and the most sheltered and privileged I've ever felt in my life. To show up in some of these neighborhoods, optimistic little white girl with my traps being like, I'm here to help cats. And people are like, literally dying in the streets in some of these neighborhoods. It's, just absolutely wild to see the evictions that were happening still, but especially during COVID. My chapter in the book called Trash talks about some of the conditions folks were living in and people forced into homelessness and then criminalized. It showed me such huge social issues that I knew about in theory, but just was not out there, living alongside people and trying to help people and realizing how hard it is to access the resources. It's so easy to say like, oh, there's shelters available if people try hard enough, or this program exists if they sign up. And when you start to try to actually navigate those resources and you hit dead ends and you get on wait lists and you start to really see the reality of that. And it is, a situation like Jeff's. I was so new then, but if someone called me now and said, "Hey, my neighbor has like 50 cats and they're all like really unhealthy and he's not feeding them and he clearly doesn't care." I mean, my little red flag antenna would go up right away. And I said, "There's no way he doesn't care." Right? I would know right away something more is going on. Jeff clearly needs help. And I say this in my book as well, but it really is something of a bellwether when there's a lot of animals suffering. It's because people are suffering as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you share those stories very, very well. It makes me think of the hot dog story.
Yeah.
I'd always ask people, have you gotten to the hot dog story yet?
Everyone loves the hot dog man.
Somebody that's the food. We're not going to spoil it if you haven't read it, but somebody that's what they could afford. That's what they could do. So
Yeah. And people caring and trying in imperfect ways, and recognizing that as care and meeting people where they're at.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Um, for those who may or may not know your history on the internet, you had a viral Thanksgiving meal for cats that
Yeah.
really kind of launched you.
Yeah.
Maybe share what was going through your mind when you did that and when it kind of blew up and became much more than you ever thought it would.
Yeah. I started an Instagram account for these cats so early on, and I wish I could explain what I was thinking then because, of course I'm shouting at my past self and I'm like, girl, those cats are pregnant. Like, go get them spayed. Why are you taking pictures for Instagram? But that was part of my learning journey. I needed people on the internet to yell at me to do that, and that's how some of us learn. Um, my original social media content was very silly, and that's all it was ever meant to be, was silly cat videos. I love a silly cat toy. I made a Halloween video where I had, a scratcher shaped like a pumpkin, and it was just spooky music with cats playing with a pumpkin. It was just silly things like that, and that was all it was ever meant to be. I had no plans to share rescue content or educational content about trapping cats. Um, but I made a very silly little Thanksgiving dinner, very fancy on little thrifted gold plates, and I titled it Thanksgiving Dinner for Stray Cats, and it absolutely blew up. Um, People like cute miniature things and people like cats, but algorithms are really weird. The algorithm took that video and ran with it. It got a number of views I could not even conceptualize at the time. And I was very much still in the mind of being just this kind of person alone in my driveway with these cats. And all of a sudden, that was like hundreds of thousands of people are watching these videos of my cats. And the next day, I got an email from Newsweek that they wanted to do a story about my Thanksgiving dinner. And I said, this is so silly. This is a, very bizarre, fleeting 15 seconds of fame on the internet. But it brought in a lot of followers who would say, why are all your cats missing the tip of their left ear? And so I would have a chance to say, oh, that's an ear tip. That means that they're all fixed through a TNR program. And people would comment and say, well, wait, what's TNR? Why doesn't my indoor cat have the ear tip? That cat is really scared of you. How did you get it to a vet? And so I got to make videos about traps, and it all took off very organically in a way that I was just kind of rolling with for as long as I could make it work. I said, why not share? I knew how just absolutely oblivious I had been when I found my cats. And I thought, I don't have to teach the whole world how to trap. I don't have to, train everyone in to be professional trappers. But if a few more people know what an ear tip means when they're seeing a stray cat on the streets, then, why not? And yeah, I kind of constantly thought that my 15 minutes of fame would end, and instead it just kept growing and growing and growing, and started trapping at colonies of, 50, 75, 100 cats, shared those videos, and people started saying, how can we donate? How can we fund this? How can I get involved in TNR in my area? And now I have this just really wonderful experience of really regularly getting messages from folks saying, I just trapped my first cat, or you inspired me to foster, or I decided to volunteer at my local shelter. And so that has been really, really rewarding and also completely unexpected from how it all started.
It's so interesting. Life can throw all sorts of curveballs, and
Yeah.
what good fortune, and being an advocate and reaching just so much further than Tucson. Really powerful, because I know some of the folks that are on tonight followed you and have read your book, and
And
you've
that's
reached.
wild. I'm glad to have you all here tonight. And that is, yeah, still really hard to conceptualize years in that people are watching and got involved. So I'm so glad to hear it. And I think especially on TikTok, reaches a much younger demographic as well. So we have seen over the last couple of years, so many high school and college students getting involved in TNR. Our volunteer base here is so young and so diverse. And that has been, I can't take all the credit for that, but I think a lot of folks are coming from social media, and it's been really, really cool to reach that audience as well.
It really is nice. I bet you cross-pollinate with some of the other groups out there as well, with
Yeah.
messaging and stories and sharing. Um, Final one, but before that, you write about how feral animals are often abandoned by the systems around them, just like many people are. What do you hope your readers online, or even folks here tonight, walk away thinking about when it comes to the care and responsibility?
What a great question. I mean, the main message is that we're all connected, right? We're all community, and that includes cats, who are not wildlife. They are not native wildlife. They're not wild animals. I wanted to start the book on that note because um, it's true. It's one of the top comments I get all the time from folks who aren't familiar with community cats is, well, they're wild animals. Let nature take their course. And they're not. We all know that. Um, Cats were domesticated. Cats rely on humans for survival. And then at some point, cats were left to fend for themselves, and they were never meant to. And we were never meant to either. Um, The most unexpected thing about my whole journey is not that I can now trap like 100 cats at a time. The most unexpected thing is the people I have met and the lessons about community and connection and how much we all depend on each other. We were never meant to be like alone in our driveways with 30 cats trying to figure out how to solve that problem in complete isolation. And I think a lot of us learned lessons about that in quarantine and the pandemic as well. But every single thing we do, we depend on each other. I think now about Jeff's neighbors who called to complain, and I'm not sure any of them ever just went over and said, "Hey, what's your name? I'm so and so. I live next door to you." And it's, I know all my neighbors now, and we take care of cats together, and that has been a really wonderful thing. So the systems might not save us, but I think we can all save each other. That's all we can do.
People will. And a final question. How many of the original 30 are still around?
That's a great question. Technically, depends on how you count, right? It's very hard to count feral cats.
A new kitten just showed up, so yeah.
Yeah, it just showed up. Where is a kitten coming from? Technically, our only remaining full-time cat here from the original 30 is Lola. She still lives on our roof full-time. 4 of the original cats, we say we have joint custody. They moved indoors with our next door neighbor. So we still see them every morning for breakfast. And I take them to the vet, but they do live mostly indoors with our neighbors. And then a good number of the cats turned out to be friendly and we adopted out. So they no longer live here, but they are alive and well, and they have their own Instagram accounts and we get to keep up with them. So that's been really lovely. And then of course we've lost some over the years. But we've inherited more new cats this year than any other year. So our numbers are climbing yet again.
Well, it takes everybody involved and everyone doing a little and everyone doing what they can do. And
Absolutely.
it might feel really small. It might just be putting change in a change jar. It might be trapping 100 cats. It might be learning high quality, high volume spay neuter skills so that you can help more cats in your vet hospitals or wherever you're a veterinarian practicing it. Everywhere in between, all of us moving in that same direction is what it's going to take to help these little creatures who did not ask to be living outdoors on their own and do need our help. So thank you for being an amazing advocate for them, Courtney, and for
Thank you.
coming and speaking with us tonight, sharing your time, your stories. Your book is wonderful. Again, huge plug for me. Everybody on here, please have a moment and take a look. I know Jackie, our president's midway through your book. So Jackie, if you've got anything you want to share as we wrap up, or any other board members, now is a great time.
No, I appreciate that was amazing, Courtney. You are an inspiration. I know you're a regular person, but you certainly are a hero as well. So thank you for your story. Karen said a lot of wonderful things as well. And I just want to thank all of our supporters that joined us tonight in any way, shape, and form that you're supporting our organization. We cannot do it alone. As you said, we're all connected and we appreciate that. So with that, I think I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, second? And then all those in favor, we say yes. It's a long night. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jackie.
Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody, truly, and have a wonderful evening. Thanks for helping the cats.